So without further ado, please help me welcome Kristen, Mike, Hunter, Jess, and moderator Imogene, everybody.
All right, we're waiting for one of us. But maybe while we're waiting, so we've heard a little bit, I think, this morning about kind of the importance of ski areas as partners and as employers in many of our communities. And maybe while we're waiting, who here lives in a community with a ski area? Okay. And who recreates at a ski area? Okay, cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about how communities and ski areas can work together on climate action and resilience goals. And maybe just to get us started, maybe we'll just go around. And can you briefly introduce yourself and your role, and then how ski area and community collaboration fits in with your work? Maybe we'll start with Jess and then go along.
Hi everyone, my name is Jess Hoover. I don't work for a ski area. I work for an environmental nonprofit based here in Summit County called the High Country Conservation Center, and I'm the Climate Action Director, so it is my honor and my job to work with all of our community partners, from our local governments to other organizations and our ski area partners, to implement our countywide climate action plan. The second part of the question was how we're involved.
Yeah, how ski area community collaboration fits in with your work.
Thank you. Ski area collaboration is tremendous for our work. I would be remiss if I didn't say that they all fund us financially. So if you're a nonprofit and you have a ski area in your community, you might consider asking them for some money. But they do. They fund us, and they're very important partners in this work. And many of them are also represented on our board of directors.
Mike?
My name is Mike Nathan. I'm the sustainability manager at Arapahoe Basin Ski Area. Collaboration, as far as where it fits into my role at a basin, I think the simplest way to describe that is, a basin's emissions, really when we talk about climate change, are meaningless. They're very small. Summit counties are a little bigger, but still quite small in the scheme of things. So I think for any of us, ski areas or other roles acknowledged, doing your work by yourself is not going to get us collectively very far. So whether it's sharing best practices from the basin to other ski areas, communicating and collaborating locally in Summit County with Jess and the other sort of stakeholders here, just amplifying our impacts by doing the work together, I think is a huge part of my job.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Blackler. I'm here on behalf of Bridger Bowl Ski Area. I'm their new sustainability director. I started this summer. And I left a job I had for 12 years as the sustainability director for Montana State University. So working between communities and the ski area is what I'm doing now. I did on one side and now I'm on the other side. So it's a really interesting way to see that. Bridger is a nonprofit ski area, but people in Bozeman think of it as their community, meaning they own that ski area. So there's a lot of collaboration that comes about with people just being very, very, very invested in what's happening there and what's happening with the future of their skiing at Bridger Bowl or in all the other places with snow. So.
Hi everybody, my name is Hunter Wright. I work for Eldora Mountain Resort. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Project Development at the resort, and I work with local nonprofit organizations, governments, and local businesses to make sure that our climate action goals and their climate action goals are aligned so we can find common solutions, not just for the long-term value of our resort, but also our mountain community.
And I'm Imogen Ainsworth, and I'm a sustainability consultant at Brendel Group, and we get to work a lot with communities and with ski areas, and not that often with everyone together, so it's been fun to work with this group and put the panel together, and they've had a great conversation as we've been preparing, so we're excited to share just a little bit of it with you today. Maybe Mike, so the inspiration for this panel came from a question that I think you've heard often, but also at last year's Mountain Town Summit, which is just, where are the ski areas and why aren't they doing more? And I'm curious kind of how you respond to that question.
Yeah, totally. So, again, last year at one of the sessions in Jackson, in the Q&A at the end of the session, basically somebody said exactly that, kind of got heated for a second, and the theme of the question was basically, yeah, like, where the F are the ski areas? Why don't you guys step up and do more? Which again, common question. I think we hear it from a lot of different angles. But, you know, I think the short answer, you know, is, and without getting too defensive, is I think we are doing a lot. I mean, all of us just said ways that we interact with our communities, you know, very significantly. I think the other thing, too, that often happens in our small mountain towns is, you know, it's honestly, it's easy and maybe preferable to sort of find a boogeyman out there. You know, you can very easily blame A Basin or any of the other ski areas in Summit County for traffic on the weekends, or I actually think the context of the question was around housing and, you know, where are the beds? Why don't you just build some more? You bring all these employees in and then they leave. So, and then again, I think the perception is we are perceived to be these huge and very lucrative companies, which we're all successful enough and do good business. But again, I think when you have those pressures that we feel every day living in towns like Bracken and Summit County more broadly, having someone as a scapegoat is nice, and we're happy to be that here and there. But to answer your question about what I think we are doing, you know, Jess, you said it, we are all, and I can only speak from my experience from the Basin and in Summit County, but we're all present funding a lot of our community initiatives. You know, High Country Conservation Center, we all contribute to the Summit County Climate Action Plan, which they administer. I think we provide a lot of in-kind goods, not only ski passes and free skiing for community, maybe underrepresented parts of our communities. But we also, and again, in my personal experience, we are part of pretty much every local planning and collaborative work group, task force, you name it. A Basin is there, our Vail Resorts neighbors are there, Copper Mountain is always there, and I know that that plays out in these other ski towns around the country. So I guess, you know, some of us are better at being really loud about it and being really out front and communicating that. Others prefer to do their work sort of behind the scenes, and I think that's a perfectly fine style as well. But yeah, I think my short answer is, I swear we are doing more.
Hunter, are you also hearing that critique of Eldora, and how do you see your work in the context of kind of local plans and goals?
Yeah, I have heard that critique. I feel like we're doing a lot. It's like we're the ducks that are, you know, we're calm on the top of the water, and then we're like swimming really hard. Our legs are going under the water. You know, speaking for Eldora and Boulder County and the town of Nederland, we are the largest employer in the town of Nederland. And in order for the town to meet their climate action goals, we have to meet our climate action goals. And so there has been constant communication on the status and what, even back when the town of Ned had committees that were talking through the Envision 2030 and what those goals would be in procuring renewable energy and electrifying their vehicle fleet and you know, increasing building automation, and you know, we were a part of that conversation, because if we don't meet our goals and they don't, then they're not going to meet their goals. So it was really important that the goals that were set were attainable. And I think a lot of us at the resorts are active in our communities. We're on the Sustainability Advisory Board, the Parks and Recreation boards. We go to Board of Trustee meetings during the season to just update the community on what's happening, what transportation initiatives have changed, what we've implemented for the upcoming season. So I do think that communication is there, but to Mike's point, we're not really screaming it from the rooftops because we are deep in operations, right? We're very goal-oriented, and when we reach the goals, yes, you'll hear it and we'll scream it from the rooftops, but until we reach those goals, we kind of have our heads down in operations.
Yeah. Kristen, we've talked a little bit about kind of what ski areas can do that maybe other partners can't, and I'm curious, in moving from a university to a ski area, if your perspective on climate action's changed, or if you just have any kind of takeaways from that shift.
Yeah, definitely have some. So it was, as part of a state university, we weren't allowed to talk about things, we weren't allowed to advocate. Oftentimes, I would come to work today and say, can I say climate change today? Am I allowed to say that today to this audience?
Yes.
I'm laughing, but those were conversations I actually had with people. And so people look at a university and think, why aren't you doing all this? And you're doing it, you just oftentimes aren't allowed to talk about it. And then other times, because I had the luxury of living in Bozeman, working on sustainability boards, meeting people like Bonnie, my predecessor at Bridger Bowl, we would have these ideas, and then I had to sit back and watch the private sector take it and run with it. So moving so quickly from thought to action and implementation of these amazing renewable energy projects, natural wastewater treatment projects, all in collaboration with our university researchers and former students, but also, and then sitting on the sidelines at a university and just saying, like, we'll get there someday, hopefully, maybe when the laws change, maybe when we get to do this, maybe when the political will changes, things like that. So one of the very first things I was able to do when I moved over to Bridger this summer was talk about climate change openly, and then also participate in an advocacy letter, which I had never been allowed to do. So I really don't take that for granted, and I have to give a shout out to all of the places here that are doing that advocacy work, because there are lots and lots of people who want to do that, universities, your state, and in some cases city government officials that can't. So kudos and thank you for stepping up when you can and where you can, always. So now that's my job.
Jess, maybe from the community perspective, what do you see as the role of ski areas in local climate action? And then what also can be done to help build trust between those two entities?
Awesome. So I have 3 thoughts on this. And frankly, Hunter and Mike have already hit on some of these. The first is measure your emissions, right? Figure out to what extent are you contributing to your community's overall footprint. And then do your part to help reduce those emissions. You might be a small player, but chances are, if you're thinking about, our Scope 1 transportation emissions, you're probably contributing to a lot of the transportation emissions in your community. So how can you help be a part of the solution there? Mm-hmm. Number 2 is get involved. Find out, who is leading your community's climate action efforts, and how can you participate in setting goals or being on committees. Mike and his colleague Helena participate in all of the working groups. We have 3 that we have locally, and through participating in our committees right now, Mike has been able to share with the transportation managers from multiple jurisdictions what they're doing at the basin for renewable diesel. Mm-hmm. And by sharing his project and progress, other folks in Summit County who have fleets are able to learn about that and think about whether or not they might want to do a similar experiment, or maybe in the future we could develop some sort of bulk purchasing agreement among all of these fleet entities in Summit County. So being at the table really helps us to facilitate that collaboration. And number 3, when it comes to building trust, I would say talk about it. And I know that you guys said that sometimes we want to be more quiet, but I think that when we talk about it and we share our successes and our failures, that makes us better partners. It shows good faith efforts to be in this together. And especially important is talking about it with your clientele. As ski areas, many world-class resorts, you have a captive audience of people who are coming to enjoy winter recreation. And I think it's a real lost opportunity if we're not sharing with those clients what we're feeling in our communities and how you all are being a part of the solution. And I was thinking about what Mayor Owens said this morning and how Kelly talked about our shared goals. And I would love to see the ski areas talk about how they're making the community's goals their goals, and to have the same message so that, for example, you see the same waste diversion signage in the resort and in the town, and so there's no distinction as you move back and forth, and they may be operated by different entities, but the message that people get and the values that they receive when they come to our communities is the same.
Maybe to your, I think there was the second point about kind of participating in committees, and you mentioned all the committees that Mike's on. Sounds exhausting. Mike, I wonder if you could share kind of some of the benefits that you see of participating in those committees, both as, you know, like a ski area, but also as a resident of the region, and what the benefits have been for the ski area, what you see the benefits for the community, and then maybe even just for you personally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think you hit it there, Jess, is we, as often the biggest influence on somebody coming to visit our community, like they're coming for a ski trip. So they're going to visit while they're here, they're going to go to A Basin, they're going to go to Copper, they're going to do a few days at Brett Keystone, you know, and all of us try to align our communications, again, using recycling as the example, around the same community guidelines that everybody in Summit County has to play by. So just like you said, this guest comes up for the weekend or for the day, they see very similar, if not the exact same signage and language in the A Basin cafeteria. Whoops. And then when they go out to dinner down in Dillon or Silverthorne, same deal. You know, hopefully when we lean into initiatives like our transportation and busing and the Summit Stage and the other sort of options that are out there for guests and for visitors of Summit County, when we're communicating about using those resources to get to A Basin, we also can obviously share that sort of ask and that resource to them to get from their Airbnb to the restaurant they're going to or to the other ski area they're going to visit. So that's one way I think we can sort of help the community communicate and reach those goals. I think on the other side of things, you know, when you're involved in all of these planning groups, there's no surprises. So we know exactly what Summit County's up to. We know what HC3 has up their sleeve. We know what our other ski area neighbors are doing, and we can, you know, jump in or step back accordingly. You know, and a good example of that is Tony Camerata, my boss, our Vice President of Planning and Development. He is on the Summit Stage Board of Directors, and he is constantly advocating for tweaks to the routes around the community that get people to A Basin on a free bus. And there's people on that board from Copper Mountain, from the Vail Resorts, from every town. And by working together, we can put together a bus system that most days and for most people actually works. And again, for us, very selfishly, that gets employees to work. That gets skiers and riders to the Basin on days where there is crazy traffic or where our parking lots fill. So that's a very tangible and, again, kind of like selfish thing that we get out of it. And then, yeah, I think personally, you know, putting yourself out there, being involved, gives you a lot of chances, well, just frankly, to learn. There's so much shared knowledge, you know, amongst our ski industry peer group. We had a great meeting and an event yesterday at the Basin where 60 or so of you from the ski areas that are here today all shared, you know, some best practices. So you can just learn and be better at your job. You can also, more or less, meet your neighbors, know what everybody's going through. I think we've found at the Basin, you know, Helena, Jess mentioned her, she's our sustainability specialist, she runs our green teams. Just by making connections, like personal connections, you like soccer, you like Taylor Swift, whatever, we can like have meaningful conversations with employees who then later on, as a totally unrelated subject, pick our brain about recycling or how our carpooling app could work for them to get to work next weekend, or any of the other actual like asks that we might have of them. And that definitely plays out sort of at the community level too.
Can I piggyback on that a little bit? One of the things I've encountered too is there is always until you can actually get in the room and be on a board or hear what the situation really is, there's always a perception of how things work, which is in reality very different, and most places have very different constraints than what you would realize unless you are in the room listening to that. So I like to do that on our boards and we try to do that and take kind of a problem-solving approach. Like, how can we support at Bridger Bowl, support our local struggling public transportation agency by getting their numbers up with riderships, so contracting with them, that then opens the door for stick funding, so a different type of funding that they can use if they can get their density or their rides up. And so kind of going in with an eye for what are the problems that I can solve, not just for Bridger Bowl, but for my region, the region, in support of the whole region. And I don't know how else you do that until you can really have those conversations and be in the room and know and say, oh, I had no idea about that. Maybe there's something we can do to work together to solve that too. So really, really encourage that kind of collaboration in the rooms, learning things that you never would have known about otherwise. So.
Yeah, I'd actually like to build on that as well with transportation. RTD serves Eldora and has regular stops every hour now coming this upcoming season. And we have been trying to get eco passes for our employees for a long time. And it's basically a pass, it's RFID, and they scan it, and they can go anywhere regionally. They could go to DIA or they could go to Eldora. And so we really wanted to do that for our employees, but because we were a seasonal operation, we didn't qualify under like the typical RTD business model, and so we weren't able to do that. But the town of Nederland had it available for their residents, and they were really worried about losing that privilege because they had low ridership and low participation. And so we basically partnered with Town Hall and had all of our employees going down to Town Hall to like register for RTD. And so that was a really good partnership. And that's an example of how, unless we were in the room, we wouldn't have known that they were concerned about not having this program and this EcoPass for residents. And we have so many employees that are residents of the town of Nederland and Boulder County. So it was a win-win. And so that's just an example of how having a seat at the table, being in the room, and then finding common solutions that are mutually beneficial are just so important. So.
And lastly, you don't have to be given a seat at the table. You can just go. I do that a lot.
You can just take the seat.
You just go until they just think you belong there and keep inviting you. So that's another trick of the trade too. So.
One of the other topics that we were talking about kind of in preparing for this was that we talk a lot about the role of ski areas in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and transportation and all of these things that are really, really important, but that it's also important to kind of reflect on the role of ski areas as managers of climate-sensitive ecosystems that are often at the headwaters of our watersheds and serve a like critical ecosystem role within our communities. And maybe staying with Hunter, I know that you've led kind of a number of wetland and forest restoration initiatives, and I'm just curious how you see the role of the ski area in creating resilient ecosystems in addition to all the other work that you do.
Yeah, I think that our goal is to create a resilient community and a sustainable business so that we can continue to have generations to continue to learn to ski and ride and enjoy our mountain ecosystems. And it's really important to be responsible in our stewardship. And one project that we did, we broke ground in May of 2024 for a new ski and ride school adaptive sports building. And Ignite Adaptive Sports is one of our oldest community partners from 1976, so they're about to celebrate their 50th anniversary, but they provide lessons for the adaptive community, wounded warriors, the blind, young adults and kiddos with intellectual and physical disabilities. And they had been, their headquarters, they lovingly called it World Headquarters, were in 2 modular buildings on our lower mountain. And so we were really excited that we were able to break ground on this new building. And because of, in order to increase access to the base of the lift, so what they had been having to do with their instructors and volunteers, they had to push sit skis up the hill. And so in order to increase access so they wouldn't have to push the sit skis up, we had to design the building and place it a little bit higher on the mountain, and then there's a bridge to the base of the lift. And so because of the placement, it was going to cause some wetland disturbance. And the Clean Water Act, Section 404, if you disturb a wetland, then you know, it's required through the Army Corps of Engineers that you do wetland restoration plan. And so you can either buy wetlands in another state or another part of Colorado or wherever you live, wherever they're available, or you could create a new wetland. And Rhea Orthner, who is our ecologist through Peak to Peak, I know a lot of ski resorts use Rhea, and she's amazing. She had been approached by the Netherlands Sustainability Advisory Board about this parking lot called Fisherman's Lot. And it was called Fisherman's Lot because people park there to go fish in the middle Boulder Creek, which is main part of the Boulder watershed. And in the late 1980s, 90s, before it was a parking lot, it was a wetland. And it had been filled in with sand and dirt. And so they really wanted to restore the wetlands to its previous glory. And so Rhea approached us because she had been working with us for many, many years. And she was like, would you guys be interested in doing this? And we were like, yes, that's a great idea. We would love to do that. So we basically went on the road, did presentation to the Sustainability Advisory Board twice, got them to vote yes. Parks and Rec Board, yes. Board of Trustees, we met with those guys a couple times, answered many, many public comments. The challenge was parking is limited, as it is in most of our small towns, and there was hesitancy to lose some parking. But after doing some research, that lot actually wasn't really used that much, maybe a couple main big events a year. But so we basically worked with the town of Ned, and instead of getting rid of the parking lot completely, we created a wetland. It was about 0.22 acres, so about 9,800 square feet, and then we also created 9 parking spaces. And we partnered with Teens Inc., which is one of the nonprofits that we work with throughout continuously, and they provide programming for at-risk kids after school, and they also have an alternative high school. And so we worked with their trail crew, their youth corps, to do the wetland installation, which was really fun. And then also we invited our Eldora Mountain Ski Club kiddos to come help us plant. And then we'll be maintaining the wetlands for the next 5 years. And we meet with the town regularly to just talk about how it's doing, and it's really taken off. It's been great. We've had to do some irrigation around the top of the wetlands, and the town of Ned has supplied a water tote for us, and so this is the last summer that we actually need to water it. So
Thanks.
yeah, sorry.
Unfortunately, I think we're out of time, but as you can see, we could all talk about this for much longer, so just grab any one of us if you want to continue the conversation, and thank you all for being part of this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
One more time for Kristen, Mike, Jess, Hunter, and Imogene. Great job.